So my name's Breen. I'm just looking, the cloud team have been all over my slides. That cloud in the corner was actually an Android robot this morning. And my job, I actually work in Android, not Google Cloud, so they've changed a few things. But anyway, I know that this is a cloud conference, but we thought we'd set up shop here and run a few sessions on Android, in particular Android Enterprise. So yeah, thank you for coming along. Typically, we announce Android-related things at Google I/O, so there'll be a lot more activity in around 1 month's time. So yeah, I head up the Android Enterprise Engineering Division. I'm actually based out of London. Android is actually built in 2 locations. Most of it's here in Mountain View, but there are also some significant engineering teams in London as well. So today we're going to look at privacy. I say privacy because I'm British. I tried switching to privacy, but I couldn't do it consistently. So if you don't understand privacy equals privacy. So how privacy can benefit IT and employees. And some of the unique features we have in Android that we've introduced recently. And also just to give you a feeling for where Android is going in the enterprise. So as you know, privacy has never been more important. Not only has the legal landscape changed with things like GDPR and so on, but also people's attitudes towards technology and privacy as technology plays an increasingly important role in people's lives. So when we talk to customers, we consistently hear about this tension between secure and always on, and private and the ability to detach from work. And this is exaggerated in BYOD devices, where users have a greater expectation over privacy. And it's in this tension that we felt there's an opportunity in Android for IT to enable security, whilst also enabling employee privacy, especially on BYOD devices. So you could ask, is this just a problem that the Valley has and we're solving it for other people in the Valley? Is this some kind of touchy-feely problem? Or is there a real opportunity in actually solving the privacy problem? When we're talking to customers, privacy consistently comes up as the #1 reason why mobile deployments hit friction. Meaning adoption of BYOD isn't what companies expect. And this is also shown on the slide here in the 2018 IDC survey. Android actually has a unique mode to deal with this very issue, and it's one of my favorite features in Android. So we'll come on to that shortly. So Android is helping companies make mobility deployments successful. We want to change the dynamic between employees and IT. Employees should feel empowered and not burdened by technology with something that is simple, secure, and respectful. But we also want IT to feel empowered to increase privacy and well-being without compromising on security by decoupling these 3 concepts. And so with some of Android's unique offerings, IT decision makers can actually advocate for their employees. So this is apparent dichotomy between security and privacy. Can these truly be separated such that having strong security does not mean less privacy? Well, let's take a look. So this is the typical world of enterprise technology. Patch Tuesday marked on the calendar gives IT the best chance of ensuring devices are secure, and running virus scans and monitoring everything which is happening on the device continuously using typically third-party software. Security is actually enabled through visibility. IT needs to know about everything happening on the device in order to ensure nothing insecure is happening. Now, mobile is increasingly shifting away from this philosophy, using some emerging new security capabilities. Yet a lot of assumptions around security through visibility have carried on to mobile. Okay, what's the virus scanning solution for mobile phones, and how do I get visibility into everything which is happening on the device? We don't think that privacy needs to be at the cost of great security. We also believe we also don't believe device ownership should determine how secure a device can be. There's no universal law that says you can't have a secure BYOD device. It's simply down to how we architect platforms. Now, IT have a challenging enough job as it is, enabling business use cases. We don't want IT to have to worry about plugging gaps in the platform itself. We also don't want you to have to worry about installing third-party security solutions and worrying about the patch rate in a particular month to ensure devices are secure. So we're trying to make sure that ownership, security, and privacy can be configured individually without the need for a business to go to another vendor. So that all sounds nice, but how do we make sure that, how do we do this in practice? Well, let's look at some of the fundamental architecture of Android. So first of all, we have server-side malware scanning, so through Google Play and Managed Play. So Managed Play is a version of Google Play which enterprises can use to curate their own app store and even push out apps onto devices, update devices, and manage their configurations. So anything that comes through Google Play or Managed Play, first of all, will be scanned there. And then we've got Google Play Protect for device-side scanning as well. Now, Android is actually built, or was originally built, on top of SE Linux. And one of the great benefits of SE Linux is process isolation, which means that if something insecure is happening in one of these boxes, so let's say one of these boxes was a piece of malware, or somehow some malware got injected, well, it's more or less, blast radius is more or less impacted to the app itself and not outside of that. So this is kind of process isolation. So if a process becomes compromised, it can't gain access to the space of another process. And you can also interrogate the operating system. So you can ask it questions like, is the version of the operating system that's running on this device, is it an official version? And that will be cryptographically attested with the trusted boots using a hardware root of trust. So you can ask questions like that. You can ask simple questions like, is the password on this device, does it meet my criteria for strong? Or has Google Play Protect flagged any issues? So two things fall out of this. Remarkably flexible management, and for the first time, the ability to remove conflict between privacy and security. So you don't need to know what's going on inside one of these boxes necessarily to know that the overall device is secure. But that might not be enough to convince you. Fair enough. So let's look at another feature. And this is my favorite feature in Android. And it's used heavily by Googlers, but also many other companies, small and large. So something called Work Profile. The way that I kind of explain this is it's like having two phones in one piece of hardware. So on the right, you can see on your screen, you've got a Work tab, and on the left, you've got a Personal tab. Anything that goes on in your work, on the work side of your phone, cannot access the personal side. And anything that happens in the personal side cannot access the work side. So not only have you got these kind of boundaries between processes themselves, which I talked about on the previous slide, but you've also got this kind of almost two virtual phones running inside this phone. And that separation is enforced at the OS level, which means that multiple vulnerabilities would have to be exploited for something personal in a personal profile to access anything in the work profile, both application sandboxing and the OS security boundary between these two areas. So in the traditional world, this would have broken. If you can't see what's happening on the personal side of the phone, well, how do you know whether the device is secure? Well, the kind of Android stance on this is it doesn't matter because what happens on the personal side can't access the work side. They're almost like two separate phones. And even from the work side, you can ask the OS questions about the overall security stance of the device. So you can ask it, are there any insecure or untoward apps on this phone anywhere? And it will tell you the answer to that by looking in the personal and work profile without breaching the trust of the user. And then you can take action as a result of that as well, so, which is usually configured to be automatic, like wipe out the work profile. And so you get these kind of strong level OS assurances that the device is in a good security posture, meaning direct visibility is not needed to ensure security. Hence, whatever the user is doing in their personal profile remains private. You can't look at network logs or anything like that from the personal side. And yet, companies are able to control and do whatever they want within the work side of the phone. And if you really wanted to put virus scanning on there, on the work side, you absolutely could. So IT only manages and views apps in the work profile. Personal data is stored separately. IT can erase the work profile or apps and data. IT can't view or erase personal data. It's literally like having two phones in one phone. Now, if you're provisioning a device on BYOD, so let's say you bring your own device to work, the typical flow, the thing that happens is you enter your work email address and password, you add an account, and if you've configured work profile, it will say either you have the option to have a work profile or you must have a work profile depending on what you set. The user can then, the device will then automatically create that separate space for you, that separate work profile, that separate phone within a phone. So I think the takeaway from this section is you consider enabling work profile, especially for reasons of privacy for your employees. And you'll almost certainly find that your BYO adoption goes up. So we believe this is the modern approach to mobile security, which enables privacy and helps eliminate the lack of certainty, which was often a deployment blocker in a lot of places. Employee confidence, they know that data belongs to them and they know what their employer can and can't see. And because these are separate data stores, if the employee leaves or the account is compromised, the work data can be wiped without losing personal data. So the risks, so it reduces the risks associated with personal data loss. And because it's clear what is work and what is personal, users don't have this kind of scary unknown question around whether they're allowed to be doing certain things on the device or being uncertain about what the company may or may not be able to see. So think about the atmosphere around user data privacy, GDPR in the EU. This is a chance for the Android as a platform to enable IT to align business interests with employee interests and an opportunity for IT to get ahead of emerging expectations around this technology. So we covered the privacy security trade-off, but another trade-off that we talked about is this kind of double-edged sword with always-on connectivity. That promise that now you can work from anywhere, this kind of mobile workforce being the mantra of enterprise deployments. Well, that's great until it's time not to be working and everything is still running on your device. So let's look at how we're trying to separate the notion of mobility and always on. We've talked to a lot of users, and the responses have been amusing and concerning. So my phone is the first thing I look at when I wake up. I think probably a lot of people in this room can relate to that. I certainly can. If I don't respond in 30 minutes, people think I've died. Actually, this is a true story. So someone went hiking for the day and didn't set their out of office notification on their calendar. They didn't have connectivity, and they didn't respond to a message within 3 hours, and their colleagues called the police and reported him as a missing person. It's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? My phone has become a dictator. So the device which is supposed to be enabling us actually becomes a ball and chain. It's that double-edged sword of connectivity and well-being. So as a society, we haven't caught up with how to manage this. And the tools haven't caught up with human behavior, frankly. Users don't have a way to filter or mitigate this always-on reality we now live in. Android is taking this problem very seriously and is starting to address it. So we introduced the concept of digital well-being in Android in Google I/O last spring. The kind of concept behind this is we don't want phones ruling our lives. They should be improving lives and making workers more productive, certainly not distracting us from the most important things in life. So we're starting to introduce some features to advance this. So I previously introduced work profile. Now, one of the benefits I didn't talk about at the time was, well, because there's kind of essentially two phones in one phone, you can switch one of the phones off. So you can switch your work phone off. And that means that everything on there is gone, literally. Nothing can drain your battery in the background. Can't sync. There's no notifications from any of your work apps. And actually, I use this feature all the time. So late in the evening, I tend to switch my work profile off. And then when I wake up in the morning with kind of like one eye looking at my phone, I don't get like a bunch of work emails. I switch that back on when I'm ready. And other people, switch that off at weekends and other things. Because we know now, because we got this profile, we know what are work apps and what aren't, because all your work apps are in your work side of your phone. You can just switch that work side off. And actually, the interesting thing, it doesn't work quite like this animation. So when you switch it back on, because the cryptographic key has been thrown away, it will actually ask you for your PIN again, because, again, it has to log into that phone. So we've added the ability. So you've got the kind of work profile switch on and off. That's one digital well-being thing. We've added the ability to let you see how to spend time on your device by giving users data. We can help them become more aware of their habits. Often what happens to me, at least, is I get a notification that an email comes in. So I open my phone up to respond to that, and then I get another notification from social media, and before I know it, I've spent 10 minutes scrolling up social media, and I've completely forgotten why I unlocked that device in the first place. So we want to make sure that the time you spend on your device is high-quality time by giving you visibility and providing controls. So first, in terms of awareness, we've introduced a dashboard which gives you a snapshot of your digital habits with 3 metrics. So you've got your screen time, so how you spend that, which apps you are in the most, and so on, and then how many times you've unlocked your phone. Often we don't realize actually how often we do that in a day, and how many notifications you received. So which apps are distracting you the most. So on the left here, you'll see how your day breaks down and what you spend your time on. And if you tap for further information, you can see trends over time. And this is especially useful if you're trying to change your habits. You can actually see, well, am I actually changing my habits by looking at these trends? And for the apps that you want to be mindful of, we've introduced app timers. And so once you've used the amount of time you've allotted for that app, the app will gray out and will be paused for the rest of the day. And you won't get any notifications from that app either. So we've all experienced how distracting these devices can be. Sitting down in a meeting, getting a notification, often that happens to several people in the meeting. And of course, the device is, in this case, interacting with us when we actually don't want it to. We don't want to be distracted. We're in a meeting. And so we've introduced gestures. One of them is flip to shush. So if you flip your phone over, it won't distract you. It won't make any notification sounds or ring if there are incoming calls. So this is on the latest Pixel devices and a number of other devices from various OEMs. The other feature we've introduced is Winddown. So lack of sleep caused a $400 billion productivity hit to companies in the US in 2016, according to a study. And for many people in this room, that's tens of millions of dollars. And we sort of realized that getting pinged at 11 p.m. probably isn't helping with that. And because sleep is really important and can keep us from getting enough, we've introduced this wind-down feature. So wind-down sets a schedule to remind you of when to switch off at night. So you set a bedtime for your phone, and it fades to grayscale and sets itself to do not disturb, so it will silence notifications. It's still completely usable and allows you to finish up whatever you were doing, but our studies have shown that it's a lot less engaging and distracting, so it's much harder to get stuck in that sort of infinite scroll or a video. So that's an important part of our well-being story. It's early days, and Android will continue to invest in digital well-being, both from a consumer and enterprise perspective. Users tell us that these types of features are helping them to change behavior, and it's a real opportunity for IT departments to champion these things and raise awareness with their employees. So we'll continue to invest in well-being for consumer and enterprise. Something that we're working on actively right now is in-app switching. So if you are, for example, using Gmail in your personal profile, and you want to change accounts to your work profile to reply to emails there, you can do that from within the app, and it will actually sort of seamlessly switch out the personal and work version of the app. So working on that. We'll continue to invest in Android as a platform. You may or may not know, but Android is actually a very popular choice for line of business applications. So things like kiosks or digital signage, point of sale, rugged devices. So in this sense, Android is both flexible and powerful. And we'll continue to invest in these things on this slide and more. So hopefully this has given you a feel for where Android is going and why Android is a great choice for the needs of workers in IT. And we hope that you've seen how Android devices can be both secure and respectful, and has shown how IT needs, business needs, and needs of employees can all be aligned.